Hi guys, it's Carl here again from Let's Talk Retro, and today I would like to talk to you about this. This is the brand new Game Boy Advance Everdrive cartridge. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm really happy that the Game Boy Advance Everdrive cartridge is finally here. Been waiting for this for a long time. I'm sure most of you know what an Everdrive cartridge is, but I'll explain just in case you don't. It's basically a cartridge that I think they've done them for now for most of the cartridge-based systems, like the NES, SNES, N64, Game Boy, Mega Drive, TurboGrafx. But it's been a while since we've been waiting for this Game Boy Advance one to arrive. And basically what they're a cartridge that has an SD card slot in the top of them, and you can then get your backup ROMs of all your collection of games, drag them onto the SD card, put the SD card into the SD card slot at the top of the cartridge, then put the cartridge obviously into the console, and then when you boot up your console, it'll come up with like a list of the games that you put on the SD card in a menu format, and you can just choose which game you want and the game will load, which is really good. And it's like I say, I'm really excited to actually have this for the Game Boy Advance now, so you can take all your Game Boy Advance games with you on the go, just on one cartridge, which is really cool. So I suppose what I ought to say before I go any further, that I've actually bought this with my own hard-earned cash. I've not actually been sent it to review or anything like that by anybody. We don't get things sent to us to review here on Let's Talk Retro, not just yet anyway. So we're going to take a closer look at this cartridge, and you can get them from the makers, which is Krikzz.com. It's Krikzz.com. I'll put a link to that in the description for you, so you can get to that nice and easy if you want to take a closer look at one of these. And now they're selling them for $99, which in UK pounds, using the currency conversion at the moment, is about £75. I actually didn't buy it from them because firstly they were out of stock, and then I found somewhere in the UK that's selling them, and that's retrotowers.co.uk. Now some of you will know them. They specialise in selling these Everdrive cartridges, flash cartridges, and some other accessories for your consoles. If you've not checked their website out, it's worth looking at. I've bought a few things from them in the past, not many, about 3 or 4 times, but always had things delivered to me really quickly. Next day delivery usually. Things are dispatched same day, next day they arrive in the post, no problems. Never had to ring them or anything, just ordered online and things have arrived. So they were selling this, and they wanted, at the time when I bought it, it was £85. I think it's actually gone up to £95. Possibly the interest rate has changed and gone up a little bit for them to put it by about £10. And then I had a voucher code which I used, which got it down to £80. So with Krikzz.com selling them for basically £75, the extra fiver wasn't going to quibble over that. And even if I had to buy one now at £95, I wouldn't quibble either, because Krikzz.com are obviously going to add on some postage. Possibly you're going to get import tax on top of that as well if customs get involved. So it's probably going to work out about the same, or maybe even cheaper if you ordered from retrotowers.co.uk if you're living in the UK. So that's a couple of places where you can buy them from and how much they actually cost. Not cheap, admittedly, but I think it's quite a good price to pay to have your entire Game Boy Advance collection just on one cartridge and ready to play at any time. So next, let's have a look at the actual features that this Everdrive cartridge actually has, and I've got a list of them here. I knew I'd never remember them all, so thought I would read them out. And first of all, it plays 99.9% of all Game Boy Advance games. So if you find a Game Boy Advance game that this doesn't work with, you're going to be probably pretty unlucky. It's compatible with all save types, so no ROM patching is required, as you've had to do with other cartridges in the past. It's got a very quick loading time of between 1 and 2 seconds. I've tried it, so I can vouch for that. It's got real-time clock, RTC supported. So we'll play games with based events like Pokemon, so if you're into your Pokemon, that's good news. It's got 1 megabit of SRAM, or 1 megabit of SRAM, 128 kilobytes of saved memory. It's got low power consumption. It supports micro SD, SDHC and SDXC cards up to 64 gigabytes, and I've got a 64 gigabyte card in there which I tested out, and so it definitely does work up to 64 gigabytes. It's FAT32 supported, and it's compatible with all variants of Game Boy Advance, so like your Game Boy Advance SP, your Game Boy Advance Micro, your standard Game Boy Advance. And it's also compatible with your GameCube player, AD adapter, and others. Now, it's interesting that they say others, because I actually posted a picture of this on my Instagram page, which is Handheld Game Collector, if you want to check that page out. We've also got our Let's Talk Retro page as well, don't forget. And so I posted it on there, and someone came along and sort of asked me a question and said, will it work with a DS? Which I was actually forgetting that if you bought the original DS or the DS Lite, you've actually got a Game Boy Advance cartridge slot built into the bottom for backwards compatibility. And I can confirm that I plugged this into the DS, and when it comes up on the touchscreen, do you want to play your Game Boy Advance game, you just tap yes, and then it loads up the menu, and you can choose your game to play from there. So yes, it does actually work, although I've not seen it actually mentioned on the Krikzz website or anywhere else on the internet that it actually works with the DS. I've tried it and it seems to be working fine with the DS, which is good news. So if we take a sort of closer look at the actual cartridge in itself, most of you who are eagle-eyed will have noticed straight away that it's a little bit bigger, a little bit taller than your normal Game Boy Advance cartridge, probably about 1 centimetre. So when you do plug it into your cartridge, into your Game Boy Advance, sorry, it sticks out just a little bit out the top, probably about 1 centimetre, like I say. Not really a deal breaker for me if I was buying one of these. It's not, it doesn't really matter to me that it sticks out. I wouldn't have not bought it because of that. Again, if you've got your Game Boy Advance SP, it's going to stick a little bit out the bottom there. You can see that. Again, not going to get in your way when you're playing your games, so again, no hardship there. And again, with your Game Boy Micro, it again just sticks again about 1 centimetre at the bottom. Not going to get in your way when you're playing your games. So again, I say that's not really a deal breaker for me, it being a little bit bigger than your normal cartridge. So on the front you've got a sticker which says Everdrive GBA, and this one's got the Krikzz logo in one corner and the Retro Towers logo in the other. They obviously have their own stickers made. When you look at the back of it, you can see the printed circuit board inside the actual cartridge case, which the case actually is really solid. It's nicely well made, it's not bendy or anything. It has Everdrive written across the bottom, and then in the top right hand corner it says Everdrive Game Boy Advance X5 model. Is that, I can't think, is it I6 or something like Rev A, and then it's got the actual date when the cartridge was made, which was 30th of the 5th, 2016. Something that most people won't worry about, but being a little bit geeky like I am, I like to know things like that, so that's on there. And of course on the top you've got the all-important SD card slot. A SD card slots in, and it's one of those that actually clicks in when you push it in with your nail. You actually get a nice satisfying click, so you know it's in there. It's not just one of those ones where you just push it in and pull it out. You've got to actually push it in a little bit to get it to eject back out. So that's the way I prefer my micro SD card slots. You know you've actually got it in there properly when you feel that nice little satisfying click. So yeah, so it's a really well made cartridge, which has got some great features if you ask me. So I guess the next thing we ought to do is have a look at how you actually set this thing up. So now I'm going to tell you how to set up your Game Boy Advance Everdrive. It's not particularly hard. If you've done one of these before, you probably know sort of like how to go about it. So what you want to do is, first of all, make sure that your micro SD card is actually formatted, if it isn't already, to FAT32 standard. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. I'll bore you out, sort of showing you how to do that. I'm sure most of you know how to do that nowadays. If not, I'm sure if you Google it or look on YouTube, there's probably instructions on how to do that online. So once you've got your micro SD card into FAT32 standard. Like I say, if it isn't already, you want to get it plugged into your computer using some sort of micro SD card reader or adapter. And then you want to go to the Krikzz website, so it's krikzz.com again. Again, I'll put a link to that in the description for you. And you want to go to, once you're on that page, the Everdrive shop will open up. And you want to click on the Game Boy Advance Everdrive cartridge picture on the front screen, which will take you to a page where you will see all the information about the Game Boy Advance Everdrive cartridge, plus an option to buy one if they're in stock. And then if you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see that there's a download section which says OS Update, and just click on that, which will take you to a page where you've got a few instructions if you want to read those, and you can also just download the latest version of the OS file to your computer. So click on that and download that. Now, it is a zip file, so you might have to unzip it. I've got my Mac set to unzip things for me as they download, so that's nice and easy. And so you just want to get that file probably onto your desktop is the best place to put it. And then I thought it was just a matter of dragging that file across to the SD card, but I was actually wrong. You have to make a folder first, which you call GBA SYS, so I presume that stands for Game Boy Advance System. And then you want to drag the OS file that you've downloaded into that folder, and then that folder goes onto your micro SD card so that it's in the root of the SD card. And that's basically all there is, guys, to setting it up. It's just like a one-time setup, apart from maybe they might be doing some updates to the OS file, so you might want to go and occasionally check and see if there's a later version of that, and just switch the one out that's in your GBA SYS folder for the new version. After that, that's all left to do is to get your Game Boy Advance ROMs onto it, which is just a matter of dragging and dropping them across. It's as simple as that. There's no need to patch the files or do anything with them like you would do in the past with other systems, like for example EasyF or SuperCard. It's just a matter of dragging and dropping the ROMs onto the SD card, and you're all ready to go. So you've got your micro SD card. Try not to drop it on the floor because it's so small and I'll probably lose it. And you've got your Game Boy Advance Everdrive cartridge. And to pop this into the Everdrive is really easy, because you just want to make sure you've got the sticker side up. I'm going to show you the sticker side up, and obviously the print on your micro SD card on the top, and you just pop it into the micro SD card slot with the satisfying click as I've been on about earlier on. You then take your Game Boy Advance of choice. I'm going to go for my Game Boy Advance SP AGS 101, the one with the brighter screen, and you pop that cartridge just into the bottom as normal. Turn on your Game Boy Advance. You get the usual Game Boy startup screen. The LED will flash on the Everdrive so that you know that the SD card is being read. And then you'll come up with like a little screen which will have a menu with the ROMs you put on there. Now you will see that I've when I was actually dragging them across earlier on, one of the games I've got on there is F-Zero, one of my favourite all-time games on the SNES, and as soon as I knew this was coming out in the Game Boy Advance I had to buy it. One of my other favourite games of all time, just started the game I think, is Speedball 2. Used to love that on the Amiga. The Amiga is definitely the best version if you ask me, but this isn't bad. So yeah, so we've got F-Zero starting up here, so I'll just turn it off and then I can turn it back on again and explain the menu to you briefly. So like I say, you get your Game Boy Advance logo and sound as usual, and then you'll see it all come up with like a little menu. Like I say, at the moment I've only got F-Zero on there and Speedball 2, but if you had the load you'd have a whole list of all your games. And then from there you can just press A to select the game. It'll come up with a little menu that will say select and start, select only, ROM info or hex view. ROM info obviously just gives you information about the actual ROM, and then the hex view gives you loads of values and numbers which you've got to be far more technical minded than me to understand what that's all about. So what you want to do to start a game then is just press A on the actual game, go to select and start, and then the game will load. Again, you get your Game Boy menu and sound, and the game loads, like they say, within 1 to 2 seconds. And you'll see I've already played this, so I've got a save file already there. It's just a matter of just going through settings as you normally would. Get your game going. And there we go, there's F-Zero running from the Game Boy Advance Everdrive cartridge. I haven't found there to be really any slowdown or anything on these games as yet. So that's F-Zero working. So to load up another game, you just turn off the Game Boy Advance, turn it back on again, and once the menu loads, choose another game. So this time I'm going to go for Speedball 2, obviously. Again, you get your Game Boy Advance logo again, or your Game Boy logo again. Let's go through all the little intro-y bits. What I feel on this Speedball 2. Here we go, Speedball 2. Again, running from your Game Boy Advance Everdrive. So that's all good then. So that's how easy it is to actually set this up to start playing your ROMs on your Game Boy Advance. So in summing up, what would I say about this Everdrive cartridge? Is it worth buying one? Well, obviously it's a little bit pricey, but I think it's worth it to have all your Game Boy Advance collection all just on one cartridge, ready to go at any time. And of course, once it's all set up, you can just leave actually plugged into your Game Boy Advance, so there's no need to take it out at all, because if you want to add more ROMs to it, again, you can just take the SD card actually out of the slot, and away you go. It's simple as that. It just needn't sort of come out of your Game Boy Advance. It can just live there, which of course is going to save on the wear and tear of your actual cartridges in your collection. It's also going to save on the wear and tear of your cartridge slot, because you're just going to be leaving the one cartridge in there all the time. The fact that it's a little bit bigger doesn't worry me. That's not a deal breaker. It's not like, so it's hugely bigger than a normal cartridge. Again, the fact that you don't have to actually mess around patching any ROMs is great, because like maybe in the past you've had one of these Easy F cartridges or a super card. You've had to sort of mess around patching cartridges or extracting save files and things like that to get them to work. And again, this is only what, 256 meg. So, and this is actually up to 64 gigabytes. So, the difference of the amount of cartridges games you can get onto one of these compared to like your old Easy F Advance or your super card is amazing. So yeah, there's definitely outweighs, or definitely beats all its opposition if you ask me, and definitely worth picking up. And the price, I suppose you're going to have to try and give it a mark out of 10, and I'm definitely going to give it the Let's Talk Retro seal of approval, that's for sure. What What do I do? Do I go for a 10? I mean, as they say, it's 99.9% of all games supported, so you could maybe knock a point off for that, and because it's slightly bigger, but I think that's just being really picky. Now, I think I'm going to have to go for 10 out of 10 on this. It's a Let's Talk Retro seal of approval, and 10 out of 10, and in my opinion, well worth picking up. And yeah, I think it's great. So anyway, guys, that's my little review and opinions on the Everdrive Game Boy Advance. If you've got any questions on it, anything you think I haven't mentioned, don't forget to just drop a comment in the comments box, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Have you got some sort of your own opinions on this? Do you think it's not as good as I'm saying? I mean, what do you think of the price? Is it too expensive for you? Just let us know in the comments. It'd be good to hear your views. So, but basically that's it for today's video then, guys. So until next time, as always, keep it retro, and we will see you very soon.